There was a night when the rain wouldn't stop and the howling came from deep within. The swamp people thought it was just the wind crying through rotten trees, but buried in that soaked darkness, a woman knelt in the mud, blood and dirt caked on her arms, clutching the broken body of the dog that had just taken a blow meant for her. Children stood still. A man filming with shaky hands couldn't speak. She didn't cry. She only whispered, "You were the first one who believed in me. I never even got to repay you." And from that moment, when the earth was drowning and hope was all but gone, a seed was buried. Quiet. Relentless. And years later it grew into a healing center that would save thousands. This is The Seed Beneath the Mire, the story of Abena, the true story of a woman once abandoned, once mocked as a witch, and how she turned mud into medicine. Before we begin, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss the deeply human, hauntingly real stories we bring to life. The screen is black. A low, heavy heartbeat begins. Then a breath. Ragged, shaky. Fade in, drone shot, over the Volta region, dusk, a vast, forgotten land. Endless stretches of muddy swamp cling to the edge of the great Volta River, churning like a serpent through cracked terrain. The sun, a burning blood-red disk, sinks low, its light spilling like fire across the marsh. A single figure moves below, stumbling through waist-high grass and thorny undergrowth. A woman. Thin, exhausted, draped in layers of dirt and fear. Abena, mid-20s, barefoot, her dress torn in 3 places, clutches a newborn baby swaddled in a faded headscarf. Her arms tremble, her breathing uneven, her skin shines with sweat and rain. She pushes forward, each step a battle against mud that sucks at her feet like claws. Narration VO. Abena's voice quiet, cracked. When the last person turns their back on you, does the earth take you in? She stumbles again, falls, her knees sink deep into the muck. But she clutches the baby high above the mud, shielding it with her own body. The child cries out, and Abena grits her teeth, determined. She drags herself to her feet. Blood on her shin, a thorn embedded. She doesn't stop. Into rickety bus. Flashback. Day 2 days ago. The world is louder here. The air thick with sweat and resentment. Abena sits in the back of the bus, holding her baby. Her husband, Kofi, 30s, stands in the aisle, his eyes hard, cold. "Kofi, I told you I didn't want this life. I didn't want you." Abena pleading, "She's your daughter. Kofi, please." "Kofi, no. You're just another mouth. Another mistake. You and your curses can rot together." He grabs her bag and throws it out the bus window. Clothes spill onto the roadside. Exterior dirt road. Flashback continues. Abena runs to retrieve the bag, crying, the baby wailing in her arms. Back to present. Extra edge of the swamp. Nightfall. Lightning splits the sky. Rain begins soft at first, then violently loud. The kind of rain that scrubs the skin raw. The wind roars across the reeds, bending them sideways. Abena reaches a slight clearing, a small ridge above the marsh. No shelter, no roof. She drops to her knees, lays the baby on her lap, and opens the bag she managed to rescue. Inside, a broken cooking pot, a tin box with a few coins, a photo of her mother folded in half, and 2 large pieces of plastic tarp. Her hands work fast. She binds sticks into a triangle frame using her scarf. Her fingers shake from cold. Thunder rolls in the distance. The baby cries louder now. She stretches the tarp into a slanted lean-to between 2 shrubs, creating a crude tent. Water still seeps in. She pulls the baby close, wraps them in what remains of her dress, and curls up beneath the cover. Her lips touch the baby's forehead. Abena whispers, "We'll make it through the night. I swear. Just tonight." Later that night, time-lapse sequence. The moon glints through thick clouds. Insects buzz. Frogs call. Shadows shift. The rain dies down, but the cold remains. Abena doesn't sleep, only watches the dark with wide eyes, waiting for danger in every sound. Exterior riverside, early morning. The sky begins to lighten. Mist rolls off the surface of the water. A golden haze covers the marsh, eerie and beautiful. Abena, half asleep, wakes to her baby coughing. Her face instantly sharpens. She lifts the child, rocks gently. The baby settles. She lets out a long breath. She crawls outside the tent, kneels in the wet earth, looks out over the still water. A moment of stillness. Her hands dig slowly into the soil, finding a patch of higher ground. From a pocket in her bag, she pulls out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside are 3 seeds, carefully tied with a strip of string. Her mother's handwriting is faint on the fabric. Insert close-up of the seeds. She presses them into the soil one by one, then covers them with mud. No tools, just fingers. A small ritual. Her lips move, chanting softly a prayer or a spell, or maybe just memories. Abena VO. She told me, the first thing you plant in a new land is not food. It's memory. Montage. Abena. Adapting to life in the swamp. No dialogue. Abena gathers large leaves to create insulation for the shelter. She braids dry grass into rope. She watches the sky at different times, learning its patterns. She walks barefoot into the marsh, collecting certain herbs, sorting them by scent. At one point, she stops and stares at a long snake slithering past. She does not scream, just watches. Then walks the other way. Into Abena's dream, night. In a dreamlike vision, she's a little girl again, sitting beside her mother in a field of bright yellow flowers. Her mother grinds herbs between her palms and says something inaudible. The sound fades back into the real world, baby crying. Exterior swamp, next evening. Another day has passed. Abena now has a ring of small stones encircling the place she planted the seeds. She sits beside it, feeding the baby crushed cassava root. Her eyes hollow but unwavering. A shadow approaches from behind a wild dog ribs, showing mangy fur. It watches her with unblinking eyes. For a tense second, they stare at each other. She reaches slowly into her bag, tears off a piece of dried yam, sets it down and backs away. The dog snatches the food and retreats. Abena whispers to the baby, "We're not the only ones who were left behind." Sunset, same day. The last light flickers over the marsh. Abena sits with her knees drawn, the baby asleep on her lap. Her lips cracked, her eyes dark, but her face holds something fierce. The wind picks up again. The shelter creaks. Somewhere in the distance, a hyena howls. Abena looks down at the child, smiles faintly through exhaustion. Abena whispers, "This isn't the end, little one. It's just the part no one else dares to start." She glances toward the stone ring in the earth, then kisses the baby's forehead. Abena softly, "We begin here, in the place no one wants." Dawn 2 weeks later. Low fog rolls in from the marsh like breath from a sleeping god. The morning is wet, muffled, and strangely beautiful. A quiet realm no one wants to belong to, except her. Abena kneels in the mud, sleeves rolled, palms dirt-stained. In front of her lies a small bundle of roots, leaves, and bark, all carefully arranged on a flat stone. She hums, low, steady, her mother's melody. It wraps around her like a protective charm. She takes a knife, the rusted one she'd found near the riverbank, and begins to slice thin strips from a root. Her hands are deft, purposeful. She speaks softly to herself in Twek. Abena, Nkin, Nsuo, Ntrim, and 3 days in the shade. She ties the root with a cord made of grass, then sets it gently into a basket woven from vines. Around her, 5 or 6 other herbs hang drying on cords, the beginnings of a knowledge passed down by women long ignored. She stands and wipes her hands on her dress. From behind the trees, whispers. Children, exterior bush path, continuous. 2 boys and a girl, ages 7 to 9, crouch behind tall grass watching her. Their eyes are wide, afraid, but curious. One holds a small stone. Boy number 1 whispers. She talks to the trees. "Did you see my uncle said she lives with snakes?" Girl, she's not human. She eats frogs, whole. Abena turns slightly. The children duck. But she doesn't shout. She doesn't chase. She just reaches for a thorny shrub and begins pulling up its roots, humming louder now, as if to tell them, "You can listen, but you won't understand. Interior village square. Later that day, gossip brews like tea in a cracked pot. Older woman number 1. She came with no husband, no family, and a baby born in the bush. Man with radio, she's running from something or someone. Older woman number 2 spits. Either mad or a witch. Exterior market trail, same day. Abena walks alone, her basket slung over her back, baby strapped to her chest. Her pace is slow, not from weakness, but deliberation. Eyes follow her from huts behind drying laundry, from women pounding fufu. A man pretends to sweep dust, but is really just staring. A mother pulls her child behind her skirt as Abena passes. No one speaks to her. No one meets her eyes. Only one figure seems indifferent. An old blind man sitting under a palm, tapping his walking stick in rhythm. When Abena passes, he hums the same melody she hums in the woods. For a brief second, she stops. Their paths do not cross in words, only in memory. Exterior swamp edge, night. The moon is full silver over black water. Abena sits near her makeshift hut, baby asleep beside her in a cocoon of rags. She's boiling leaves in a broken tin pot over a fire of wet wood. The smoke rises in ghostly ribbons. A soft rustle behind her. She looks up. A dog, thin as death, limping with a gash on its leg, eyes glowing in the firelight. They watch each other. The dog snarls faintly, but it does not move. Abena reaches slowly into the pot, pulls out a leaf and blows on it, then sets it down on a flat stone. Next, she pulls out a salve crushed from seeds and palm oil and places that too. Abena quietly. I know what it feels like. To be torn and left alone. She doesn't move closer, just sits, waiting. The dog limps forward, smells the leaf, licks the salve, retreats a step, then lies down. It doesn't trust her, but it also doesn't leave. They sit in silence, the fire crackling between them. Two wounded creatures sharing a flame. Flashback into her childhood hut. Years ago, Abena is 6. Her mother dips a cloth into boiling herbs and applies it to a man's swollen ankle. Abena watches fascinated. Abena's mother, not every pain cries out. Some sit inside people, for years. Back to present, Abena gazes at the dog, and maybe sees her own reflection in its wary eyes. Exterior clearing near village. Next day, Abena crouches at the base of a tree harvesting a patch of leaves with distinctive jagged edges. She smells one, nods, then tucks it into a pouch. Behind her a rustle, then thwack! A stone hits her back. She freezes, turns slowly. A boy, maybe 8 years old, stands with another rock in hand. Rage and fear in his eyes. Boy, you're the swamp witch. My aunt said you cursed her chickens. Abena doesn't flinch, doesn't scold. She simply sets her basket down, walks past the boy without a word, and kneels beside the patch of earth in front of her tent. She begins to dig, her fingers moving the soil with quiet grace. The dog, now bandaged, limps over and lies beside her, eyes half closed. The boy stares. He throws the second stone. It lands near her foot. Still no reaction. Abena plants a young sprout, one of the herbs she's been growing from seed. She pats the soil gently, like tucking a child into bed. Only then does she glance up at the boy. Not with anger, not even sadness. Just a long, quiet stare that says, I know pain louder than your scream. The boy falters, then runs. Into Abena's shelter, night. Wind howls, rain starts again. Abena sits cross-legged, writing in a notebook, torn, salvaged pages tied together with reed string. She draws the shape of a leaf, labels it. The dog sleeps beside the baby. She leans over the notebook and writes, root for fever, but only after boiling 3 times. Bitter means safe. She tears off a page, folds it, tucks it into a hollow carved into the tent pole. Then she rests her head back exhausted, one hand on her child's chest, the other on the earth. Morning, the next day, a strange stillness in the air, as if something is about to happen. Villagers pass the swamp edge, but keep their distance. Children peek from behind banana trees. No one says a word, but they see her. Abena bent over her plot of earth, planting 3 new saplings. Her fingers move with devotion. She's not just growing herbs. She's building something. With patience no one else understands. Final moments of the scene. Narration VO. They called her mad because she spoke to leaves. But the earth always answered. The camera pulls wide the swamp, the river, the makeshift tent, the woman bent over, roots, her child sleeping, the dog watching the horizon. Still isolated, but no longer alone. Exterior swamp, evening, storm brewing. A low rumble spreads across the land, distant at first. Then closer, sharper. The skies shift from gray to charcoal. The marshland holds its breath. Abena kneels outside her shelter, planting a young root. Her hands are steady, but her eyes flicker to the horizon. The air is thick with dread. The dog lifts its head, whines. A sudden gust of wind rips through the clearing, snaps the tarp. Abena rushes to grab the frame, but it's too late. The plastic sails into the air like a ghost. She grabs her child and ducks. Exterior swamp, later rainstorm. The downpour comes like a curtain, violent, immediate. Sheets of water batter the marsh. The remaining structure collapses into a heap of mud and sticks. Abena clutches her baby against her chest, both of them soaked. She runs, slipping, the dog limping behind her. They crawl under a massive baobab tree roots, twisted like the arms of an old god. The trunk shields them from the worst of the wind, but not the cold. Thunder splits the sky. The baby cries, a shrill rasping sound, fevered. Interior village compound, night. A soft yellow light glows behind a wooden gate. Abena stands outside, drenched, the child in her arms, trembling, his eyes glassy with fever. She knocks. No answer. She knocks again, harder this time. The door opens a crack. An old woman stares out, stern, tightly wrapped in a kente shawl. Her eyes narrow as they meet Abena's. Abena, please. Just a corner, a roof, even the floor. My son. He has fever. Please. The old woman glances at the child, then back at Abena. Old woman. You brought sickness with you. We saw it coming, in your shadow. Abena. It's just the rain, the cold he needs. Old woman, he is not my blood. Go back to your swamp. She shuts the door. The bolt slams shut with finality. Abena stands there, water dripping off her face. Her baby coughs again, his breath shallow. She doesn't cry, not yet. Exterior marsh trail, night. She stumbles back toward the swamp, feet sliding in thick sludge. Her baby is burning in her arms. He whimpers, weak now. So small, so hot. His eyelids flutter. Abena to herself, no. No. Not like this. She stops in her tracks, looks around, wild-eyed, frantic. Then almost in reflex, she whispers, Abena sahung. I need sahung. She digs through her pouch, empty. She dropped her satchel in the storm. No time to waste. Exterior, deep forest. Minutes later, she ties the baby onto her chest with a wet cloth. Tight. Protective. Then she runs. Into the trees. Into the dark. Branches whip her face. Mud sucks at her legs. The storm is less violent here, but no less punishing. Each breath is a gasp. Every root a trap. Abena breathing, don't die, not you. Flashback. Abena as a child, night. Her mother holds her in the exact same way, under a tree during a storm. Young Abena burning with fever. Abena's mother softly. The land gives. The land takes. But if you know its secrets, it will listen. Back to present. Exterior, deeper into the forest. Continuous. Abena spots at a bush with star-shaped leaves and pale violet flowers. Wild sahung. She drops to her knees, starts digging fast, clumsy. Her fingers tremble. She yanks a whole root out, another and another. Suddenly her foot slips. She tumbles down a slick slope, lands hard at the bottom of a muddy bank. Her head hits a rock. Blackout. Silence. Rain. Soft. Steady. Abena opens her eyes. Blood trickles from her forehead. Her baby is still strapped to her, breathing barely. She reaches for the herb still clutched in her palm. With shaking limbs she climbs, crawling, gripping mud with her fingers, slipping, crying now, not from fear but from sheer exhaustion. Exterior swamp shelter, hours later. She returns just before dawn, soaked, shivering, her child now cold to the touch. She lights a fire. crushes the Xai Hung root with a rock, boils it in her broken pot, whispering the old prayer, Abena leaf for breath, root for fire. Don't take him, not yet, not him. She dips a cloth in the brew, places it on his chest, rubs the rest over his feet under his arms, fans him with her hands. Time slows. All she can hear is her heartbeat and his. Then a cough, small but sharp. His body jerks, then stills. She leans over him terrified. He breathes, again, then deeper. His eyes flutter open. He reaches for her finger. Abena breaks. Sobs rip from her chest, guttural, raw. She holds him like she's holding the world together. Rain still falls outside, but the fire inside burns bright. Abena whispers, if you live, I swear I'll never give up again. Exterior swamp, dawn, the storm has passed. Mist floats low across the water. Abena sits by the fire, her child sleeping beside her, breathing slow and calm. The dog lies nearby, one eye open. She holds the root in her hand, the Xai Hung, and stares at it like it's a sacred relic. From the trees, someone watches. A girl no more than 12, holding a clay pot. Curious, scared, but watching. She doesn't speak, just lingers long enough to see the woman beside the fire. The herbs, the baby. Then she disappears. Narration VO. Pain is loud, but so is the silence that follows rejection. And in that silence, she learned to speak to the earth. Fade out. Exterior village path, late afternoon. The light has turned golden, but there is no warmth. The wind moves in slow, uneasy gusts. A crowd gathers near the outskirts of the village, voices rising nervous. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, lies limp in her mother's arms. Her skin is hot flushed, eyes fluttering, breath shallow, sweat beads on her forehead. Her name is Afua. She moans faintly delirious. The girl's mother, Isi, paces in front of the healer's hut. But the healer isn't there. He's gone to the neighboring town for supplies. She's been waiting 6 hours. Villager number 1, it's the fever. She's burning up. Villager number 2 muttering, she won't last the night. Essie grips her daughter tighter. The child's lips are pale. Her chest rises and falls uneven. Then from behind her, a whisper. Villager woman. There's only one other place you can go, but you won't like it. Exterior swamp trail, sunset. Essie walks fast, carrying Afua against her chest. Her face is pale, determined, terrified. Behind her, 2 villagers follow at a distance, watching. They stop just short of the swamp's edge. Villager man, you're going to trust her, the mad woman. Essie snaps. My daughter is dying. What would you do? She pushes forward, stepping into the tall grass through the damp. Her shoes sink. She keeps going. Extra Abena's shelter, continuous. Abena is tending a pot of roots and leaves. The dog lies nearby, chewing a stick. Her child naps beside the fire. She hears the footsteps first. She turns and freezes. Essie is there standing in the fading light, her daughter limp in her arms. Her face is different now. Not proud, not cruel, just broken. For a moment, neither speaks. Then, Essie quietly, please. Abena doesn't answer right away. She stares at the child notes, the signs, instantly yellowed eyes, skin burning, faint tremors. Then she steps aside, wordlessly. Essie enters. The others stay far back watching. Enter Abena's shelter, moments later. Abena lays Afua on a mat woven from reeds. She checks her pulse, lifts her eyelids, listens to her breathing. Then she moves fast. Too fast for Essie to even process. She crushes dried bark between stones. Mixes in leaves she's dried from weeks past. Adds a splash of boiled river water from a gourd. Abena murmuring adewunmi root, for blood. Bako leaf, for the fire. She pours the liquid into a small calabash. Then tears a cloth from her own garment, dips it, and presses it to the girl's chest. Essie watches rigid. Essie, will she live? Abena doesn't answer. She places her palm on the girl's forehead. Then begins to chant, not loud, not dramatic, just low, steady. Words pass down from her mother. Abena, spirit of the root walk the blood. Spirit of the tree cool the fire. Spirit of the woman, hold this child. Afua begins to convulse lightly, then more intensely. The dog growls. Essie flinches. Abena holds the child's arms down gently, then lifts her head and pours 2 sips of the bitter brew into Afua's mouth. It dribbles out. She tilts the girl's head, tries again. Essie sobs, quiet but relentless. Rain begins again. Not like before, just steady, cold. The sound of drops against the tarp roof fills the space. That and the girl's stuttering breaths. Abena doesn't stop chanting. Exterior, outside shelter, night. Villagers have gathered at a distance, standing under trees and thatched overhangs. They don't speak. Just watch. Whispers pass among them. Villager number 1. She's going to kill the child. Villager woman, or save her, no one knows. A baby wails in the distance. Thunder rumbles. Inside the tent, time moves like water dripping from a leaf. Interior shelter. Later that night, Afua moans in her sleep, her body still trembling. Abena sits beside her, eyes hollow from focus. She replaces the cloth on the child's head, fans her lightly with palm leaves. Essie holds her daughter's feet, rubbing them. She glances at Abena. Essie softly, I'm sorry. Abena doesn't respond. Essie, when you came to my door that night, I looked at you and saw my own fear. I thought, if I turned you away, it wouldn't spread to me. She wipes her face. Essie, but fear spreads anyway, doesn't it? Silence. Then the child coughs. They both freeze. Afua opens her eyes, not wide, not strong, but awake. She blinks. Whispers something too soft to hear. Essie leans close. If you a horse, I'm cold. Essie weeping, you're awake? Oh God, you're awake. Abena closes her eyes. Her hands drop to her lap. Her body shakes not from exhaustion now, but from release. She whispers barely audible, Abena, thank you. Exterior village. The next morning, the news spreads like fire. She cured her. The girl woke up. She used leaves, just leaves. Some shake their heads, some deny it. Some begin to wonder. Exterior shelter. Later that day, Abena sits outside cleaning her tools. The dog lies beside her, eyes closed, sunning itself. Essie emerges from the tent, holding Afua, now dressed and alert. The child clutches a small reed doll Abena gave her. They pause. Essie meets Abena's eyes again, this time with something deeper than apology. Respect, maybe even awe. She says nothing, but she bows her head, then walks back toward the village, her daughter in her arms. Narration VO. Sometimes it only takes one soul to stop running, for the world to stop looking away. The camera rises as the mother and child disappear into the trees, and Abena turns back to her garden of roots, planting something new. Dawn. Village outskirts. The rooster hasn't even crowed yet, but the light is already shifting cool blue and slow, like breath drawn before a confession. Inside Abena's tent, a stillness hangs. Essie sits upright, eyes hollow with waiting. Her arms are wrapped tightly around her daughter Afua, who now sleeps but differently. No more tossing, no more groaning, only soft, rhythmic breathing. Abena stares at the girl's face, watching for the flicker of something. Then it comes. A twitch. A flutter beneath closed eyelids. A murmur from cracked lips. Afua whispers, Ma. Essie's head jerks up. Her breath catches in her chest. Afua, I'm hungry. It's not a scream, not a dramatic gasp, just a simple, tired request. And it is everything. As he lets out a sound between a sob and a laugh, covering her mouth with trembling hands. Abena leans in and gently pulls back one of the girl's eyelids. The yellow tint is gone. Gone. Exterior village center. Mid-morning. Word spreads in a slow, pulsing wave. First, a child runs to the market. Then a man overhears. Then 2 women carry water past the healer's empty hut and stop mid-step. By noon, 5 villagers have wandered down the trail that leads toward the swamp. They don't approach. They just stand at a distance, watching the shelter as if it's something sacred and dangerous. Extra Abena's shelter. Later, Essie steps out of the tent holding Afua's hand. The girl is weak but walking. A piece of cloth covers her head. Her fingers clutch her mother's tightly. Standing near them are the same 2 villagers who had doubted Essie days before. Now they exchange glances, whisper behind cupped palms. Abena watches it all from a few feet away. Her dress is still torn, her hands caked with dirt. She looks like she's just crawled out of the earth itself, which in some ways she has. Essie turns, faces her fully. Essie, you saved her. Abena doesn't respond, just gives a faint nod. Essie softly, will you come? Abena's eyes narrow. She follows Essie's gaze toward the village, toward a house with a thatched roof, smoke curling from its kitchen. A house, not a shack, not a lean-to. Abena hesitates. She looks down at her hands, then at her child still asleep inside the shelter, then at the dog who sits beside her tail, thudding once. She finally nods. Into a village compound, moments later. It's the first time Abena has been inside a real house, since the bus, since Kofi, since the moment her life cracked open. The inside smells of yam stew and soap, not medicine, not blood. She stands just inside the doorway, uncertain as Essie gestures her in. A small boy peeks from behind a curtain. A baby stares from a hammock. Essie offers a cloth to dry her hands. Abena hesitates, then accepts. The silence is thick, but not hostile. Then a voice cuts in. Older woman. She shouldn't be here. From the corner, the same old woman who once slammed the door in Abena's face steps forward. Her expression is unreadable. Older woman, you let a stranger touch your child and now you feed her. Essie. She's not a stranger. She's the reason my child is still breathing. The old woman looks at Abena, long, then nods, just once. Not approval, but acknowledgement. Exterior village path, later. Abena steps out of the house. Her hands are clean now. Someone gave her a new cloth to wrap around her shoulders. It's nothing fancy, but warmer than the cold she's worn for months. She walks back toward the swamp slowly. As she does, she passes a woman holding a small boy. The woman stops her. Woman, he has a rash. He can't sleep. Could you? She trails off, unsure how to ask. Abena pauses. Looks at the boy, his cheeks blotchy, skin dry. She nods. Abena, bring him at sunset. Exterior, Abena's shelter. Sunset. The light is golden again. But this time not empty. A mother kneels beside her child as Abena grinds leaves into a thick paste. She applies it carefully, muttering under her breath. The woman offers money. Abena shakes her head. Abena, no. But bring me water next time, or dry wood, or banana skins. The woman frowns. Abena softly. It feeds the soil. The dog circles them twice, then darts toward the clearing and begins barking, not in fear, but excitement. Another figure appears, then another. 3 villagers, then 5. Some holding hands with children, others carrying baskets. A slow, cautious trickle of humanity. Exterior swamp, night. The fire crackles higher than usual tonight. The wind is gentler. The rain holds off. Abena sits beside her garden patch, now larger than it was weeks before. The dog lies at her feet, belly exposed, completely at ease. Her child, now stronger, toddles nearby, holding a stick and drawing in the dirt. From inside the shelter, the soft sound of humming Afua's voice. Singing something Abena once chanted to the trees. The swamp is no longer silent. It is alive. Narration, VO. They came to her not with trust, but with desperation. And yet she healed with hands the world once spat upon. Close up the dog. He lifts his head, looks toward the forest line. Something unseen stirs, not danger, but change. His tail thumps twice, then faster. He bounds forward, weaving between garden patches, herbs, drying racks, as if announcing something sacred. Behind him, Abena smiles. She doesn't know what tomorrow will bring. But tonight, the land is listening. Exterior swamp, early morning. The fog is soft, like silk, wrapping the trees in a pale gray veil. The sounds of the village wake slowly. Buckets clanking, chickens, scratching babies, crying in staccato rhythms. At the edge of the swamp, the first visitor appears. A man, hunched, cautious. He carries a bundle of twigs tied with twine and keeps glancing back as if someone might accuse him of something just for being there. He doesn't enter the shelter. He leaves the bundle near Abena's herb line, clears his throat, and says low, "Man." My wife, her back, it won't let her sleep. Then he walks away. Abena, already kneeling nearby, doesn't move right away. She watches his retreating form, then picks up the bundle. Inside, cassava peelings and dried citrus skins. Useful. The next day, a woman comes. Then two boys. Then another mother. Always with their offerings, ashes for soap-dried fish, fabric scraps, and their shame. Shame disguised as curiosity. Exterior swamp, day. Abena walks barefoot through the thick, cracked mud beside the river. She stops where the ground softens, kneels, and marks the soil. She digs. It takes hours. She's digging a well. The swamp water is brackish, unstable. But she knows the underground veins. Her mother taught her where to find them, how to read the moss, how to wait for earth to speak back. With her son watching from under a tree and the dog pacing in a lazy circle, she drives her hands into the ground like she's praying with her whole body. By sunset, water trickles upward. Clear, drinkable. Montage. The village begins to turn. A girl carries banana leaves to Abena's tent and watches her grind them into poultices. A boy with a cut on his leg sits quietly as Abena wraps a cloth soaked in a bitter-smelling tea. Two women follow her to the riverbank. Abena pulls a vine from the trees, shows how to slice it and what part to dry. Herbs hang from every edge of the shelter, now organized by scent, color, and bitterness. A child draws a picture in the dirt, a stick figure with a long dress and big hands labeled Balang Damle. The nickname spreads like laughter. Exterior swamp edge, one afternoon. The dog barks softly. Not alarm invitation. Abena steps outside to find three women waiting. They're older, weary, dressed in vibrant but faded cloth. One wears a head wrap that shadows her eyes. Another has hands cracked from washing too many floors. Woman number one, we want to learn. Abena, what do you want to learn? Woman number two, how to listen to the plants. Abena studies them. Abena, listening takes more time than talking. Woman number one, smiling. We've got plenty of time. Interior teaching scene. Late afternoon. Abena squats beside a fire, slowly heating water in a wide pot. The three women sit in a half circle each, with a notebook handmade from scraps and bundles of dried leaves. She passes each leaf around. Abena. This one's called ododom. It's loud. Bitterness so strong it makes you wince. That means it fights infection. Woman number three, softly, like a mother who loves hard. They laugh. Abena smiles. But the smile fades quickly when she sees one of the women press her palm to her lower back, wincing. Quiet pain. Abena doesn't say anything. She just takes note. Later that evening, the same women help. They hang herbs. Label them with charcoal on clay boards. One tends the fire while Abena crushes a bark. Another rocks Abena's child while telling a story about how she once tried to be a seamstress but couldn't thread a needle straight. They're not just learning medicine, they're unlearning shame. Exterior village path. Next day, a small crowd forms around a boy with a swollen eye. His sister leads him to Abena's shelter. No one stops her. No one whispers anymore. They're watching for a different reason now, not judgment. Hope. Enter Abena's shelter. Noon. Abena is grinding herbs when a figure appears at the entrance. An old woman. Slight. Bones wrapped in paper skin. Her name is Nana Akua, the oldest in the village. Nearly blind, but her tongue is sharper than any blade. She doesn't speak right away. Just steps into the space barefoot and touches the string of drying roots. Nana Akua, your mother planted these. Abena turns. Abena, you knew her. Nana Akua nods. Nana Akua. She came through this village once, long ago. Told me the forest knows women better than men do. Abena tries to hold back emotion. Nana Akua can't. She was right. You're not just healing fevers, child. You're binding things that were cut too deep. She gestures toward the herbs, the dog, the tools. Nana Akua. You're not treating the sick. You're healing the silence. Abena exhales a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Exterior swamp that night. Abena stands beneath a sky full of stars. Her son beside her yawning into her leg. The dog curls up at their feet. She stares at the garden she's built, not just plants, but people habits, memories. For the first time, the wind doesn't feel like a warning. It feels like a welcome. Narration VO. She didn't build a hospital. She built a language. And the village began to speak again. Close up one plant. A new sprout pushes up through the dirt. And next to it, a tiny wooden sign, etched by a child's hand. The word misspelled but legible. Healing. Extra Abena's herbal garden. Morning. The garden glistens in dew. Sunlight dances across rows of carefully marked herbs, each with its own story, its own root in memory. Children are playing near the drying racks. One of the women Mansa sifts leaves on a woven mat while humming. The dog barks once. Not a warning, not a greeting, something in between. Then comes the sound car tires on gravel. A white government vehicle pulls into view, cutting through the morning peace like a blade. 3 men step out. One wears a badge clipped to his pocket, district health officer. He's flanked by 2 younger assistants in crisp shirts and boots, too clean for the swamp. The laughter stops. Mansa stands. Children scatter. Abena emerges from the shelter, wiping her hands on her wrap. The officer barely looks at her. Health officer. You're the herbalist. Abena, I'm Abena. I treat people. I help. He unfolds a folder with stamps on the cover, begins reading aloud. Health officer. Unlicensed practice of medicine. Dispensation of substances without oversight. Unauthorized establishment of a medicinal facility. He glances at her garden. You can't keep doing this. The villagers gather, whispering. Abena stands tall, heart racing. Abena. No one else was helping them. I didn't charge. I just listened. Health officer. You've created a liability. If someone dies under your watch, it's on the district. It's on us. He snaps the folder shut, points to the herbs. Health officer Conted. All this has to go. By order of the council. Abena. You'll destroy medicine to preserve paperwork. Health officer dryly. We'll destroy danger. He nods at his men. They begin yanking up roots. Crates tip over. Leaves scatter. One man knocks over the drying rack with a machete. The dog charges, barking, snarling, a protector. One of the men panics and swings the wooden end of a rake. Crack! A yelp piercing high raw. The dog hits the dirt limp. Abena screams, runs forward, too late. Blood darkens the fur near its ribs. Abena sobbing. No, he's not. He's not even. She cradles him, his breathing ragged. Each inhale a struggle. His tail moves once, then stops. She rocks back, clutching him. Abena, you protected me. And I never starts to break. I never repaid you. Not once. The officers walk away without a word. Their car disappears behind a cloud of dust. Extra Abena's shelter, late night. The fire is cold. Her hands are caked in dirt and blood. She's dug a shallow grave beneath the baobab tree. She lays the dog down gently, covers him with banana leaves. Then earth, no words, just her hands trembling. Her son stands beside her now, 6 years old, watching everything, eyes older than they should be. She finishes burying the dog, stands, walks into the shelter, packs into your shelter, hours later, a bag by the door. The calabash, her mother's seeds, folded notes, the last of the dried herbs. She wraps her son's old shirt around them, ties it tight. Her son stirs half asleep on a mat of grass and palm. Son, where are we going? She doesn't answer. He sits up, sensing the shift. Son, softly, you're leaving. Abena swallows hard. Abena, we've stayed too long. It's not safe now. Son, but you built everything. She kneels, runs her hand through his curls. Abena, I built it because we had to. Now maybe somewhere else we can just live. She stands, walks to the door. Extra path to the river. Pre-dawn, fog curls through the trees. The sky is slate blue, the world quiet. Abena walks slowly, her bag over one shoulder. Her son follows, barefoot, arms folded, silent. The dock is close. She can hear the water, feel it calling. Then, footsteps, behind her. She turns. Her son has stopped, staring, not sad, not afraid, defiant. Son, you're the healer. She blinks. Son, louder, you're the one who makes things better. When people hurt, they come to you. He takes a step forward. Son, Conted. You made a garden grow in mud. You made me live. She lowers her bag. He walks closer. Son, now pleading. If you leave, who's going to teach them how to fight for each other? She drops to her knees, eyes wide, full of grief, of wonder. He puts his hand on her shoulder. Son whispers, don't go, please. You're not the broken one. This place was, until you came. A pause, sun smiling. You're the one who heals. You're not done yet. Exterior garden, sunrise. Abena stands before what's left of the garden. Roots exposed, herbs trampled. She holds her son's hand. Around them slowly, one by one, the villagers return, carrying baskets, bundles of herbs, clay pots. They begin replanting, silently, with her. Narration VO. They tried to rip out the roots, but they forgot the woman who grew them knew how to plant in storms. Exterior village square, early morning. The drums begin slowly, 1, then 2. Then a thunder that spreads like wildfire through mud-walled homes and sleeping courtyards. Villagers pour into the square, voices, sharp faces determined. Men in woven tunics, women with babies tied to their backs, elders gripping walking sticks like spears. At the center of the crowd stands a boy holding a hand-painted sign. Abena is not the danger. She's the cure. Someone starts chanting. Crowd chanting, "Leave her roots alone. Leave her roots alone." The chant rises, becomes a roar. The dust kicks up around their feet. At the edge of the crowd, Abena watches in stunned silence. She never asked for this, but they're here anyway, because the garden grew in them too. Interior District Office, same day. The health officer stands at the window, face blank. On his desk, a photo of the swamp garden, a report half-written, and a file stamped, "Urgent public disturbance, herbalist incident." Outside, villagers are gathering. He turns as a voice interrupts. "Young man OS. Sir, I believe I can help with this situation." The health officer frowns. The young man steps into view. Late 20s, clean shirt, stethoscope coiled neatly in his bag. Dr. Eli Mensah. "I'm Dr. Mensah. I heard about the woman they're calling the healer of the swamp." Health officer, "She's an unlicensed practitioner violating district health code." Dr. Mensah, firmly. "And I've seen 3 separate patients in Accra Hospital, survivors of severe malaria, whose recovery they credit to her remedies." The officer hesitates. Dr. Mensah opens his bag. Pulls out sealed pouches, notes, pressed leaves. Dr. Mensah counted. "If she's wrong, shut her down. But if she's right, then we've been blind." Exterior swamp garden, later that day. Abena kneels in the dirt, hands deep in the soil. Around her, the garden lives again. The villagers helped replant faster than she could believe. She hears footsteps, looks up. Dr. Mensah stands at the edge, eyes wide. "Dr. Mensah, I'm here to learn." He kneels beside her. Into garden shelter, evening. A pot boils gently. Abena opens her book of notes pages, worn from years of trial and error. Dr. Mensah takes samples, examines roots, records, measurements. He watches as she applies a crushed leaf poultice to a boy's skin, immediate reduction in swelling. I'm Dr. Mensah. You documented all of this. Abena, my mother started the book. I'm just adding to it. He pauses, glances at her. Dr. Mensah. You know you're changing everything, right? She shrugs. Abena, I didn't mean to. Exterior swamp, night. Flashbulbs flicker. A journalist, young camera slung over shoulder press badge, pinned to chest, stands in front of a bamboo fence. Behind her, villagers wave palm leaves, hold up handmade signs. Let her stay, healing is not a crime. We trust our roots. Journalist to camera here in the Volta region. A grassroots movement is growing literally around a woman named Abena, who has been treating fevers, infections, and pain, using traditional methods passed down through generations. Her voice fades as the footage cuts to Abena teaching children how to sort dried leaves. An elder smiling as a swelling on her leg fades. Dr. Mensah holding a microscope slide, nodding. A small girl handing Abena a flower with both hands. Interior Ministry of Health. 2 days later. Inside a conference room lined with glass windows, a group of officials in suits sit stiffly as a senior analyst clicks through a slideshow. Analyst confirmed anti-inflammatory compounds in the bark extract. In vitro response to the Baco compound shows promise in combating both P. falciparum and P. vivax strains of malaria. Murmurs. One official clears his throat. Official number 1. Where was this material collected? Analyst Volta Marshland, from a herbalist named Abena. Official number 2. We need to validate her inventory immediately. Exterior swamp garden, the next week. The officials arrive without warning. But this time, no one flinches. The villagers form a quiet corridor along the trail. Abena stands in her garden, hands behind her back. Her son beside her holding the same wooden sign from the protest. One of the officials steps forward, notepad in hand. Official Ms. Abena, we're here to evaluate your site. We'll need samples. Abena, you're welcome. Just don't bring fire to what's still growing. She walks them through each row, leaf by leaf, memory by memory. Interior shelter. Later that day, a small table has been cleared. The officials compare notes with Dr. Mensah. A microscope sits between them. One of the officials holds up a vial of dark liquid. Official, you extracted this from raw ododon. Abena boiled twice. With salt. My mother said the salt opens the bark's voice. The official chuckles softly. Official to Dr. Mensah, she's not wrong. It increases alkaloid release by nearly 18%. They go quiet. Then they nod. Exterior swamp garden, sunset. Word spreads again, but this time not from fear, from recognition. Children light small lanterns around the garden paths. Women place their offerings at the base of the baobab tree. Bananas, cassava, a handmade necklace. Abena stands alone in the center, the sky bleeding gold and fire. Her son steps beside her. Son, you're not just healing us anymore. She looks down at him. Abena softly, I never was. Narration VO. They tried to uproot her, and she became a forest. They tried to quiet her, and she taught the world to listen. Exterior bank of the Volta River, early morning. A veil of mist lifts slowly off the surface of the river, revealing a clearing that didn't exist a year ago. Now it's alive. What used to be a patch of overgrown mud and tangled reeds has become a sanctuary. Low wooden structures with wide eaves, open-air drying racks, clay ovens built into the earth. Children in bright wrap skirts move between rows of newly cultivated herbs, pointing, laughing, learning. A fresh sign hangs at the entrance, hand-carved and sun-warmed. Volta Center for Indigenous Plant Medicine, founded by Abena. Just beneath it, painted in smaller letters, when roots grow deep, storms mean nothing. Interior herb processing room, midday. Abena moves between tables where women slice bark and weigh dried seeds into paper envelopes. Her hands never stop touching, checking, encouraging. Woman number 1. The new dryer gets the leaves brittle in half the time. Abena, and the oils stay intact. Woman number 1, smiling better than sun drying. We measured. Dr. Mensah showed us. Abena smiles faintly, but her mind is elsewhere. She walks to the back of the building where light filters through high slats. Inside, children are gathered around a flat board filled with labeled leaves. A girl raises her hand. Girl. What does it mean when a leaf turns your tongue bitter? Abena kneels. Abena. It means the plant is talking to you, warning you. Bitterness is not a punishment. It's a lesson. The children nod, some wide-eyed, some skeptical. One boy whispers, she talks like the trees taught her, and maybe they did. Exeter Memorial Tree. Later that afternoon, just beyond the outer fence of the center, at the place where the first garden was ever planted, stands a small tree. It's stronger now, its trunk thickening, its canopy casting shade. Beneath it, a simple wooden cross, engraved into the bark of the tree itself in careful, uneven letters. Nguibandotin, the one who protected when no one else would. Abena stands in silence. Her hand rests against the bark. Next to her, her son places a small reed collar at the base, woven from grass and hibiscus. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. They both know what was buried here. Loyalty. Companionship. The memory of choosing not to run. Into your main center building. Evening. The sun begins to fall, painting golden light across the wooden floors. Abena reviews records entries from patients, notes from volunteers. The numbers are staggering. 300 people treated in the last 6 months. 42 cases of malaria resolved with native remedies. 5 confirmed recoveries from typhoid using bark extract tonics. She exhales slowly. A quiet pride heavier than triumph, gentler than joy. A knock at the door. She doesn't look up. Abena, come in. Footsteps, slower, heavier. She lifts her eyes and freezes. Standing in the doorway is a man. Weathered, worn, a slight limp. His clothes are too clean, as if they don't belong to him. He carries no bag, just a shadow behind his eyes. Kofi. For a long, sharp second, neither speaks. Kofi, I wasn't sure if you'd still be here. Abena straightens. Abena, and I wasn't sure you were still alive. He steps inside, looks around, tries to smile, but it doesn't reach his eyes. Kofi, I saw you on TV. My friend in Kumasi sent me the clip. Said, "Isn't this the woman you left?" He laughs once, bitter, small. Kofi can't. I didn't recognize you at first. You looked taller. Abena doesn't blink. Abena. That's what happens when you stand up for others. Silence. Kofi, I came to say. I was wrong. Abena, you were. But you didn't come to say sorry. He nods quietly, ashamed. Kofi, I came to see if you needed help. Abena walks past him to the door, opens it wide. Abena, I needed help 6 years ago. Now I just need space for more seeds. He looks down, exits slowly. She watches him go, not angry, not broken. Just done. Before she closes the door, she says softly, but without hesitation, Abena, thank you for leaving. You gave me the chance to meet myself. Exterior Volta Center, night. Lanterns flicker along the walkways. Inside, laughter echoes. Someone sings an old song, soft lulling. A baby sleeps on a mat near the kitchen fire. Abena stands alone under the moon, hands dusted with root powder. Her son comes up behind her, hands her a folded note. Son, teacher Amma said I should write down what I want to be. But I already know. Abena unfolds the note. In crooked handwriting, I want to grow things that make people better. She kneels. Abena, then you already are. They look out over the garden, over the center, over the swamp that used to swallow her. It doesn't look like mud anymore. It looks like life. Narration VO. They tried to bury her, but she wasn't a weed. She was a seed. 67. 01 740. Sowing seeds for the next generation. Interior Medical University. Lecture hall. Day. A sea of white coats. Young minds, sharp eyes. The scent of sterilized floors and caffeine. A banner above the stage reads, Traditional Knowledge, Modern Medicine. Guest speaker, Abena Nkrumah. Abena steps onto the platform. Her dress is simple but radiant in color, patterned with vines and leaves. No podium. Just her, and a worn leather-bound notebook in her hand. She doesn't start with facts. She starts with silence. Then softly, Abena. I didn't learn medicine from a textbook. I learned it from watching plants outlive grief. The room stills. She walks slowly across the stage aisles, touching the front row, then the back. Abena can't. My first lesson was when my son was burning with fever and no one would open their door. I found Sehung under a tree older than any clinic. That tree saved his life. She lifts her notebook, opens it to a page filled with faded writing. Abena can't. These aren't just recipes. They're memory maps. Some were whispered to me while my hands were shaking. Some I wrote the night I almost gave up. Students lean forward. Abena can't. You can measure blood pressure, you can scan for tumors. But do you know what bark tastes like when it's ready to heal? Do you know how long to hold the silence when someone's pain is older than their words? She smiles, not proud, but anchored. Abena can't. That's what I came here to teach. Exterior Volta Center, late afternoon. Abena walks slowly along a footpath that winds through her garden. Now a botanical archive. The rows are marked with wooden signs, multilingual labels, student notes laminated in plastic. Beside her is her son, now 16. Tall, thoughtful, wearing a button-down shirt tucked in clumsily, his satchel bouncing at his side. He runs a hand over a sprig of bitter leaf. Son, I still remember the day you made me drink this when I had stomach cramps. Abena chuckles. Abena, you cried more than the fever itself. Son. It tasted like tree bark, dipped in regret. They laugh. They walk in silence for a moment. Then his voice shifts. Son. Quietly, Mom. Did you ever hate the world for what it did to you? She stops walking, turns to him, looks not at his face, but through him for a moment, seeing all the nights she curled under rain-drenched tarp, all the rejection, the ache, the weight. Then she smiles. Abena, no. I only ever learned to love the things I planted, even if I had to dig them from the mud. Even this life, especially this life. She touches his chest. Abena can't. You're the best thing I ever grew. Interior Volta Center, student classroom, next day. Her son stands before a group of first-year students, his peers. He's nervous, holding a sample vial of oil made from pressed bako root. Behind him, a chart shows anti-malarial properties. To his side, a microscope lens. In his voice, echoes of his mother. Son, my mother said every root has a reason. I think people do too. He hands out samples. A few students gag at the bitterness. He smiles. He's not here to impress. He's here to continue. Exterior Abena's back garden, sunset. Abena waters a new sprout near the stone of the dog's grave. She doesn't say anything, just tends to it gently, as she always has. From the distance, she hears her son calling, Son OS. Mom, the new delivery of leaves is here. She stands, brushes dirt from her knees, walks into the light, hands still moist with earth. Narration VO. She planted more than herbs. She planted a way back home for everyone who thought they'd been left behind. 74. 01. 77. Zozru. End. Seed of Eternity. Exterior Volta Center. Early evening. The golden hour bathes the center in a soft, glowing hush. The wind rustles through rows of leaves, touching the soil like a memory being whispered back into the earth. Children run barefoot between herb plots, laughing, dodging each other, their sandals forgotten. Teachers call them gently toward the main hall for evening roll call. One boy no older than 7 lags behind. He's not from here. He has the look of someone passing through. Clothes too big, a canvas bag tied with string shoes split at the toes. No one's watching him. No one's calling his name. But his eyes, curious wide, scan the ground like he's looking for a message written just for him. He stops, kneels, and there, nestled between cracks in the garden stones, he sees it. A seed, dark brown, smooth, half buried in the soil. He gently picks it up, brushes it clean with the corner of his shirt. He doesn't ask whose it is, doesn't wonder what it will grow into. He just knows it was meant to be found. Exterior riverbank. Minutes later, the boy walks alone down a winding dirt path toward the edge of the Volta River. The sky behind him blazes with dying light. His footsteps crunch over dry grass. He reaches a bend where the water slows, clear, gentle whispering over stones. He kneels, digs a small hole with his hands. The soil is warm. He places the seed inside, covers it, pats it once. Then from his bag, he pulls a battered tin cup, scoops water from the river, pours it slowly over the patch of earth, and sits, just sits, watching, waiting, not for the sprout, not yet, just for the silence to settle around what he's begun. Close up, earth shifting under his hand, not visibly, not yet, but the weight of something is changing. The hush that follows isn't emptiness, it's promise. Narration VO, Abena's voice steady quiet. From the place no one wanted to live, something grew that made the world kneel. Fade to black. On screen, white text on black. Based on a true story from the eastern region of Ghana. Silence. Fade out.